But we learned a lot about Scottie Pippen of that Bulls team, not just about what he meant to the Bulls and what he was going through at the time during that season, but his upbringing in Arkansas, his draft onto the Bulls. Jalen, why is it so important that we know so much about Scottie Pippen to tell the story of Michael Jordan and these Bulls?
Well, he was the greatest sidekick of all time. And as you alluded to, coming from a small college, he was underheralded in a lot of ways. People were surprised he went high as he did in the draft. You have to give Jerry Krause a lot of credit for understanding the potential that Scottie Pippen had. And as he ascended, that's when they went from being a Michael Jordan dominant scoring centric team to a squad that continued to move the basketball, play in the triangle. And while, of course, MJ was still going to be that dominant player, you need somebody else that was going to play at an all NBA level if he was going to upend the Lakers, the Celtics, and the Pistons. And initially, when Scottie played against the bad boy Pistons and he caught his migraines, they weren't able to get past that squad. And as he matured and got a lot better, he became a game changer, a two-way player, a point forward, somebody that complemented not only MJ well, but playing multiple positions, was really smart and versatile. So he was a guy that deserved all of the accolades that he got, and that's why he one of the top 50 players to ever do it.
So, Jalen, one thing that episode 2 did that, again, what I mentioned before, is this so good at sort of filling in the gaps in your memories of these teams, because we always think about these two sets of three-peats. We think about this invincible team, but in the season that they're focused on, in 1997, the Bulls did not start hot. Without Scottie Pippen, they really did not jump out of the gates. And you being on a competitive team in the same conference, do you feel that perhaps this Bulls team was beatable, that this Bulls team wasn't like the other Bulls teams before, and that this was going to be the year that the Pacers were going to beat the Bulls?
Absolutely, because if you look back at who was coaching the All-Star game, because their squad has the best record at that point of the season, that would be Larry Joe Bird, Rick Carlisle, and Dick Harder of the Indiana Pacers. So we were very conscious of not only their record, but trying to get home court advantage, which ultimately ended up deciding our series as we played them so many times during that year. And unfortunately for Scottie, that season, other than winning the championships and all of the great accolades that he was able to achieve, it's still marred by the fact that teammates, since you signed the deal, can look at it like you were being selfish and sabotaging their year by not getting your surgery in the summer, but getting it at the beginning of the season. But then at the same time, you're a competitor. The organization is basically thumbing their nose at you, acknowledging that they're not going to readjust your contract. So it was a unique storm that he was put into. A lot of people would have handled it the way he did. And because of that, he doesn't get the love that I think he really deserves. But MJ never won a championship without Scottie Pippen.
There's two sides to this. There's, I've been underpaid, I've been underappreciated, I've been disrespected, I need a different contract, I'm not going to get surgery, I'm going to enjoy my summer. And the other side is, well, you're obligated to the team, you made a commitment to your teammates, you made a commitment to the city, you made a commitment to the franchise, you signed a contract, you should obligate that contract. You always side with players. We've been doing this show for 9 years. You always side with players. But this one isn't so binary. It's not so cut and dry. So quickly, I just want to know, what do you think about Scottie's decision to get the surgery at that point in the summer?
Well, ultimately, when you sign the deal, you got to own it because you are cashing the checks. But this is unique, Jacoby, and here's why. How does management go into a year after a squad led by Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson basically tell them that Phil could go 82-0 and they're not bringing him back? Like, how do you say that to an individual? How do you look at Michael Jordan after number 5 and feel like you're going to break up the team, you're going to trade Scottie Pippen in the offseason? Scottie asked for a trade. He didn't want to be there anymore. They were their most unhappy 6 championship winning team of all time. And it shouldn't be that way.
Jalen, appreciate your perspective, but we'd like to welcome back in to the Jalen Jacoby After Show presented by State Farm, the director of The Last Dance, Jason Hehir. Jason.
Man, trending all over the place. Jason Hehir, Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan, all trending.
Episode 2. And one thing that you did, a decision that you made, which was, it was pretty bold, was that you said, you know what? I'm going to start episode 2 with the story, not of Michael Jordan, but of Scottie Pippen. What was behind that decision for this episode?
As captivating as Michael is and as culturally significant as he is, you're not going to spend 10 hours watching a story about anybody. So we knew when we started this thing that we're going to tell the story of the Bulls dynasty through the lens of the 97-98 season, starring Michael Jordan. But just like there were other players who made up that team, there's other characters who make up this series. And Scottie is the Robin to Michael's Batman, as they said in the doc. So it seemed like a good place to go. You know, we knew we wanted to do backstories about Dennis Rodman and about Phil Jackson and about Steve Kerr and about Scottie and, of course, Michael. So we had to look at the season as a whole and say, okay, when is there an opportunity during the season to tell this person's backstory? Well, Steve Kerr, for instance, had some huge shots that he made in the playoffs during the Eastern Conference Finals, Jalen, against your Pacers. That's episode 9 of the doc. That seemed like the right time to go back and tell his story. Dennis Rodman, after Scottie returns from an injury in episode 2, you'll see that Dennis Rodman goes off the deep end in episode 3. Seems like the right time to tell his backstory. In episode 4, Phil needs to bring Dennis Rodman back in and incorporate Scottie back into the locker room and still manage all of those egos. Seems like the right time to tell his story in episode 4. So it was really dictated by what was going on in the season and the master list of characters that we had at the outset when we started telling the story.
As a player and as a competitor, it always pains me to understand that history truly isn't going to appreciate Scottie Pippen for the player that he was. I know he's top 50 and he has 6 championships, but he still gets dismissed as Robin in a lot of ways. And it's not only because he played alongside MJ, it's because a lot of these moments when he wasn't getting his money made him look selfish, and he acted out on those things. Do you feel like MJ has some resentment towards Scottie when he did things like didn't get surgery after the season and waited until training camp basically started and did it on company time?
I don't think there was lingering resentment that affected the performance of the team. I think that Michael was exasperated. And as he plainly says, Scottie was being selfish. He also said that Scottie thought he was going to force Jerry Reinsdorf's hand. And Michael knew better than anybody, you're not going to force Jerry Reinsdorf's hand. So I think he kind of rolled his eyes. Michael lives in the present, doesn't look back, doesn't look forward to this day. But certainly back then it was like, okay, here's what's in front of us. Here's the hand we've been dealt. Scottie got that surgery late. There's no way of changing that. How are we going to move forward? How are we going to survive in the Eastern Conference without him until he comes back in January? That was his mindset. It's impressive. There's a lot of things impressive about Michael, but his mental stamina and his mental fortitude to just say, I'm not going to concern myself with that because this is the situation in front of me. How do we best handle this now? That, as you know, Jalen, is as much of being a leader as performance on the floor.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.